Okay, friends, I'm Stephen Sas. On behalf of the Chuanyan Monastery in Carmel, New York, the Buddhist Association of the United States, and the Wuju Memorial Library, I'm pleased to be back with you here for another set of Summer Pali Intensive by popular demand. It seemed a very surprising and wonderful amount of interest in the first group of 10 classes we offered here. And so we decided to give another set of classes. And this is a set of 9 additional classes, which we will be studying the Gare and Karuna Tilaka textbook. And I hope to be covering chapters 3 through 5. That's lessons 3 to 5 in our book. We'll see how that goes. There's certainly a lot of grammar being presented to us all at once, and we'll see what happens. We have unsurprisingly, a little bit of a smaller group for this second set. But so I would encourage those who might be joining via YouTube to come on over to the Zoom room so you could participate easier. Because now that we have a bit of a smaller group, maybe we could have more class participation. I'm hoping more and more people are happy to read and translate together with us. And maybe we'll even start calling on people to see how much they've been doing their homework. So we're launching into chapter 3, and we've covered a lot of ground up to this point so far in our initial 10 classes. We covered the present tense or present indicative in 3 persons. So we covered personal pronouns, first person, second, and third, singular and plural. We spent a lot of time talking about the absolutive, the infinitive. We spoke about equational sentences. We also had a big look at demonstrative pronouns, and then relative and demonstrative clauses, and even something called the correlative construction. And so all of this can be found in the first 2 chapters of Gare and Karuna Tilaka. And so now we will have a look at number 3, lesson number 3. So let me start by sharing my screen. Somehow I don't see. Here we go. And so the first thing I wanted to maybe talk about, before we look at our readings, talk about 4 large grammar points. And so the first thing to talk about here are the interrogative pronouns. Those are the pronouns that ask questions. And they're based on this root called ka. And pronouns that are interrogative, just like other pronouns and most other things that are not verbs, need to be declined properly. And so we can see here in these boxes that they are found in the singular and plural, and they are found in 3 genders: masculine, neuter, and feminine. And of course, our 8 cases, well, 7 cases, because we wouldn't have a vocative interrogative pronoun, of course. And you might think, well, this is an enormous amount of new information, but I should point out that the marker always for an interrogative pronoun is the K. So when a pronoun starts with K, it is interrogative. And if you do look carefully, you will see the family resemblance to the other declensions we've looked at before. The group of nouns, the ones that are masculine short A, we'll recognize the asa, the ena, the umha, and here in the plural we'll see a lot of anang and ehi and esu. So they're not entirely out of the blue. They are sharing a strong family resemblance. And I wanted to look a little bit at the dictionary entry for these, because I do want to practice a little bit with you becoming comfortable using the dictionary, because it's such an important part of a Pali student's study, using the dictionary. So this, again, we've talked about this before, but this is the University of Chicago's online version of the Pali Text Society's dictionary. And here's the entry for ka, and that's where you'll find the interrogative pronouns. And of course, we see first that it's defined as who. And so it asks who, and we get, starting here with number 1, our declension. In case you weren't sure of how it might be declined, you have the answers. You have it explained. And we have also, which we're going to be talking about in a moment in today's class, the indefinite pronouns. And those are formed by combining with what's called the clitic chi, C-I, which comes from the Sanskrit chid. And we'll actually see that resurface. So we have kochi, kachi, whoever, or some, or kinchi. These are very common. And so it's mentioned here in the entry, you'll see towards the bottom, in sandhi. Now sandhi is a concept we spoke maybe briefly about, but sandhi is the joining of 2 or more words or parts of words to make bigger words. And so that joining is governed by several rules, and that is generally referred to as sandhi. And it tells us here in the entry that in sandhi, the original D of the chid is restored. So we have this kochid eva, for instance, which we're going to have in our reading. And so the D gets restored, most likely for pronunciation reasons. So the word is pronounced more smoothly. So that's the interrogative pronouns. And we're gonna, maybe I'll go quickly to number 10. That's grammar point 10. Now that we're on this subject, here we go. And so we have a whole section in our grammar for today, or for this lesson, about clitics or particles. And so we have this chi, indefinite. And so we have king combined with chi to get king chi, which means anything, or ko chi, anyone, kasa chi, to or of anyone. So they're called indefinite because they refer to sort of a somewhat vague group of people, not a specific person or specific groups of persons, but rather this indefinite body of things or people. So that is our interrogative pronouns and also indefinite pronouns with the clitic chi. Now, a second point I wanted to mention, we're not going to go through everything here because it could be maybe a little oppressive to look at every grammar point. As I've said before, it's maybe more fun to look at the text and work backwards to look at the grammar. But it should be mentioned that in Pali there are 2 main verbs to be. The verb to be exists in 2 different words. It might seem like there are 3 different verbs, but in fact I'll show you in a second why there are really only 2. And so the first one is atti, which we see here in our box at the bottom of the page 33. And this is one of the verbs we can say to be, to exist. This is perhaps the more existential kind of verb used. I'm not going to talk too much about the differentiation between these 2 in a kind of abstract lecturing way, because I think it's just really much more helpful to look at how they're used in the text and sort of draw one's conclusions from that, rather than a very abstract kind of treatise on the different uses of these verbs. But atti is a very common verb. It means to be, to exist, or it is, we have our full declension here. And you'll notice that it's actually pretty regular for the verb to be. We have our personal endings that we recognize from present tense. We have the me and amha, si and ta, and then this is a little different, ati, and then slightly irregular santi, but we do have that anti for the third person plural. And the other verb is hoti, but hoti is really the same as bhavati. And I'll show you why. Bhavati, in other words, is hoti. So let me just write this down. So here, bhavati is another verb, to be. It also can mean to become. If we look at bhavati, very often in Pali, this ava combination resolves to O, the letter O. And then this BH, this aspirated B, for some reason, the B just drops out. And see, voila, bhavati has become hoti. So bhavati and hoti are really essentially the same verb, which is important to keep in mind. And here is the declension. Of course, they're declined differently, or I'm sorry, conjugated differently, but they have the same sense for the most part. And so you recognize once again the personal endings being rather similar to what we know. Hoti, honti, hosi, hota, homi, homa. Not really that different. And often this verb, ati, is negated. We've had this, I think, in a different way before. So nati, it is not. And we have a sample sentence here. Nati satto yo evang samkamati. And we'll talk a bit about this verb samkamati in a minute. But so, nati satto, there is not a being. Satto is a being. Satta, this is a very common word, like bodhisatta, or even more famous, we have bodhisattva, which is the Sanskrit form. So Sanskrit sattva, that tva doesn't usually stand in Pali, and so we have satta, satto. There is no being. Here we have yo, which I hope you recognize as our relative pronoun, that who, or that which, evang, thus, sankamati, transmigrates. And so we'll talk about sankamati in a moment. And now I wanted to talk about the optative mood. And so the optative, so far we have only been dealing with one kind of verb tense, which is called present indicative. In fact, verbs can be said in a technical sense. I'm no expert grammarian, but verbs can be said to exist as tenses, and sometimes they're said to be moods. And I believe that present indicative is actually considered a mood, but I've been calling it present tense, and that seems like an easier thing to understand. But optative is really not a tense, but it's a mood. And what that may mean is that instead of implying a very specific place in time, like the past, the present, or the future, it implies rather a potential event, a conditional event, something that might happen, something that's suggested that could happen. It often has a sort of future sense that were you to do this, then that would happen. But there's no real fixed point in time. It's somewhat similar to, in English, we have the subjunctive. And so if you're familiar with subjunctive, the optative will feel a bit familiar to you. There are several kinds of endings for optative, and these are one set. And the big marker to recognize the one thing to know for now about optative, to recognize it, is this double Y. This double Y will sort of tip us off that we're looking at a verb in the optative. Okay. So here is labati. the verb to get in a full conjugation. Labeyami, labeyasi, labeya, labeyung. So we'll talk about this more. It really just is a question of getting used to it. It has a sense of one might get, one could get, one perhaps even should get. And let's look at a few examples of the optative. So here we're told the optative indicates that the situation described is hypothetical, that it might be true or it might come about. The sense is often future, as I've said. And there may be an implication that it would be good if it were the case. So here we have yada tumhe atanava janeyata. So yada means when. Tumhe, I hope you recognize as a personal pronoun. That's you, plural, y'all. Then janeyata is our verb, janeti, in the optative, janati. Janati in the optative, janeyata. When you would, if you would, or when you would know this, and then atanava. So atanava with this apostrophe is eliding eva, which is an emphatic. So by yourself. So when you would know this, really by yourself. And so this is sort of an exhortation, but it doesn't really indicate a specific point in time where this is happening. It's sort of a condition. And then we have here another example, kusalang dukaya sangvateya. So here I hope you can recognize our verb, which we've had quite a bit up to now, sangvatati, which means leads to, and we've spoken about how it takes the dative as its object. So here, the subject is kusalang, if the wholesome, or if merit would lead to, that's sangvatati in the optative. So notice if I just had the present sangvatati, it would be the wholesome leads to sorrow, or if merit leads to sorrow. But since it's expressed, the verb is expressed in the optative, it is this kind of if-then sense. And then that's why we add the if. If the wholesome would lead to dukkha, that's expressed, as you can see, in the dative. And then the second half of this is nahang evang vadeyang. So here, vadeyang, I would not speak thus evang. So here, it is entirely hypothetical because this is not a true statement. And so it's expressed in the optative. It's not a statement of a real state of affairs. So that's optative in a very kind of quick overview. And now the last thing I want to talk about as a sort of grammar overview, a quick grammar overview, is in fact the present participle. And so we've talked about the idea of participles a bit already, and I'm hoping that you have become slightly accustomed to the idea of a participle. The question always arises, what is a participle? So a participle, in a simple sense, is something which is based upon a verb, but it's a verb that has been transformed into either a noun or an adjective, and therefore it is declined, not conjugated. So participles need to be declined like nouns. They are no longer verbs that are conjugated. And so there are present participles, there are past participles, and there are even future passive participles. We've seen these before. We've just called them adjectives because the main way, or the primary way I would say that participles work, is that they function as adjectives. They modify nouns, but they must match the noun. As we've said, adjectives must match the noun that they modify in case, number, and gender. And the way that the present participle is formed is with this nt, nt, as you can see here, peace. And so we see here gachati, the verb to go. We take the present stem, not the root, and so it would be formed with this gachant, and then we would have to put our personal endings on. Labati, labant. So see that nt there, that is telling us we're looking at a present participle. And so what's remaining is to understand what the case endings are. And the good news is that the case endings resemble, in large part, the declension or the case endings for the short A class of nouns, masculine. So we see them here. It might be easier to look at them actually attached to a real verb. So it's a little bit different in nominative, gachanto or gachang. So those are two options for the present participle nominative singular. The gachang is often referred to as the short form. And then we have gachantang. And so we're only given two cases for now. I think if you want to see the whole declension, you can look in your book on page 70, and you'll see the whole paradigm there. And let's talk a little bit about the uses of the participle. Now, this is really important. I'm going to start with the second kind, which is called the another use of the present participle, is to modify a noun like the English ing participle, which is maybe another way of saying it's like a adjective. And so we have here, as I've said, it has to agree with the noun in person, number, and gender. So here is our quick first example. Budang gachantang pasami. And so here, pasami is our verb, pasati, first person singular, I see. And the other two words are expressed as objects, direct objects of that verb, to see. And we see who? We see Budang, we see the Buddha. Gachatang, going. So that's gachati in the present participle, masculine singular. So literally this says Buddha going, I see. But it means I see the Buddha going. Here's another one. Dhammang desentu tathagato evang eva vadati. So we find the subject of our sentence right in the middle, the tathagata, expressed, as we know, in the nominative singular. And it's being modified with this adjective. We might say desati, the verb, descento, now as a participle in the nominative singular masculine to match as an adjective tathagato. So the teaching or the preaching tathagata, and the object of this is dhammang. So the dharma. So the dharma teaching tathagata, or the tathagata who is teaching the dhamma, evang eva vadati. Thus indeed says indeed thus. Vadati says evang, thus. And so that's the very common way we have a present participle being used. And there's another one which we'll see in today's reading, which is a little more complicated, because what it is actually the subject of the sentence. It's no longer really an adjective. It says here, an actor verbal noun denoting the doer of the action. So that we might say that it's the subject of the sentence, and it's doing an action. But it's not a verb, it is a noun, and it has to be declined. So descento, that's deseti, one teaching or one preaching, thus bubbo is competent. So notice the adjective bubbo is matching in the same way, case, number, and gender. And then here's from our reading, anyang kayang samkamanto natti. So the subject of this sentence is the participle, the present participle, from some comity, but here it's formed, we see that NT at the end, and the O personal ending, so to speak, or the O declension. So the one transmigrating, but there is nati. So we have nati. There is no one transmigrating anyang kayang. So that's the object to another body. So we'll look at this more and more. I hope that first pass is valuable to you. And we'll see them in real life, so to speak, used in our readings. And I hope that's where they'll become more clear and more sort of friendly. So let's now go to our readings. So this is my file. I have put some glosses here. If you find it confusing with my colors and brackets, I totally understand. You can, of course, just look at the book where it just has the plain text. And so here we have a reading from what is probably considered a para-canonical text, not really a core part of the Pali Canon. It's called the Milinda Panha, which I have here at the bottom. So Panha is a question, and Milinda is a person. And Milinda was actually a Greek empire king who lived, I think, several hundred years after the Buddha. And he lived in, I think he was actually born in what today is considered Afghanistan. And he lived in northwestern India. And he is said to have converted to Buddhism. And his Greek name was Meander, M-E-A-N-D-E-R, Meander. So if you want to learn more about this person, you can look him up, and you'll probably find him listed as with his Greek name, Meander. And so in this sort of staged group of conversations, it's between this king, King Milinda, King Meander, and a monk who I guess existed called Bhante Nagasena. And so they have these sort of rather sometimes abstruse conversations about things, but of course it has a teaching Dhamma aspect. So we're not really here to talk about the Dhamma, we're here to talk about grammar, so we can read these things in the original Pali. So the first thing I wanted to show you, and I have it here in my file, is the two different verbs that this teaching, this sutta, is sort of hinged upon, which are not very common at all, at least not the first one. And so the first one is pati sandahati, and this is based or built upon the root da, or dahati. This is actually, I believe, the root which the word samadhi is also, which has the sense of placing all together, to compose together, samadhi. But pati sandahati has that putting or placing, plus it has two different common prefixes, pati and sang, and it has the sense of connecting again and again, or sometimes called relinking. And what this means, this is actually, I think, the Buddhist conception of what happens after death, that there's something that continues on to a subsequent life, a subsequent existence. There's sort of a relinking consciousness. This is sometimes called pati sandahati. And now the opposite, or not the opposite, but the sort of a different view of what might happen after death is expressed by the verb sankamati. This is built on the root kam. I believe the Sanskrit root would be kram. And so the verb kamati means to go on, to walk on. And the sense of sankamati is a transmigration of a soul from one body or one person to another one. And this is a rather common idea. I think anyone who knows about Christianity, for instance, has heard this idea where there is a solid, fixed self, which after death, in that intact state, carries on to another place, so to speak. And so these two verbs, or these two, we might say, philosophical concepts, are juxtaposed in our reading. So it's a little bit obscure if we're just trying to learn the grammar, but we will try our best to make sense of it. And so I'll do a first pass, and then we'll hopefully have some people to do it. We'll do it again. And so there's lots of things going on here we can talk about. And so we have here Bhante Nagasena. And so Bhante is this honorific word that I'm sure you all know. It means typically venerable. And then we have our vocative, Nagasena. And so here we can know that Milinda is speaking. He's addressing Bhante Nagasena. This is a question. And he says, Ati kochi satto yo imam kaya anyang kayang sankamati ti. And so he says, Ati kochi satto. So here, right away, we can see two things that you might recognize from my grammar preview. We have the verb to be, there is, and this is the third person singular, and it's going with satto, which is a person or a body or a being. And then we have this indefinite pronoun. So this is ko plus that clitic we spoke about, chi, plugged together. So it has this indefinite sense of anyone. So kochi satto, is there any one? Is there any being? Yo, that which. That's our relative pronoun. It's also in this masculine nominative singular. And then we can go to our verb, samkamati. So again, that is this transmigration idea. So we might translate that as transmigrates. So is there any one, or is there any being that transmigrates? And now we have imamha kaya. So kaya, this is expressed in the ablative case. So kayo is a body in the ablative, and this is the demonstrative pronoun. This is built upon the group that's the very close pointing one, as we spoke about in our last section, which is built on ayang. You can find this in chapter 2. This is the ablative form. From this very body, from this body, anyang kayang, to another body. An anyang is another. And this is these words are expressed in the accusative case. So here, notice we have this movement. The first, the departure is expressed in the ablative, and the destination is expressed in the accusative. So putting that all together, we could maybe we can translate, Venerable Nagasena, is there anyone who transmigrates from this body to another body? And the answer comes, Nahi Maharaja ti. So Maharaja is great king, and Na is the negator, no, no. And he is an emphatic clitic, in fact. So it means something like, certainly not, no way, no, great king. And then we have this next sentence, a little more complicated. Yadi Bhante Nagasena imamha kaya anyang kayang sankamanto nati nanumuto bhavisati papakehi kamehi ti. And so here there's a lot going on. In fact, we're getting thrown in a whole nother tense, a whole nother verb tense that we didn't even think we were going to do today, perhaps. But bhavisati is the future tense of bhavati, and so it has the sense of will be. And so we're just getting maybe this one verb, We're not really talking about the future tense as a thing. We're just throwing this in. And the marker often for future tense is this double S, bhavisati, will be. And so, going back, yadi means if, and then maybe we can go here to nati, if there will be. If there will be not, or if there is not. And then we have this thing, sankamanto, and this is what we just spoke about a moment ago in the grammar explanation. This is the present participle functioning as a subject. And so this is one who is transmigrating. If there is not one transmigrating from this body to another body, then we have nanu mutto bhavisati papakehi kamhehi. So nanu, this is this negative interrogative. Then is it not that there will be, and this is actually a past participle, one liberated from evil kamas or evil actions. This is our ablative plural, from evil actions. So the sense of this is, wouldn't there be one liberated from bad actions if there isn't one who transmigrates from one body to another? In other words, if there isn't this kind of transmigration, aren't we kind of starting with a brand new, fresh, clean slate because there's no transference? That's the question. And so the answer comes back, slightly tricky, from Bhante Nagasena. And so he says, Ama Maharaja Yadina Pati Sandaheya Mutto Bhavisati Papakehi Kamehi Yasma Chako Maharaja Pati Sandahati Tasma Na Parimutto Papakehi Kamehi. And so this is sort of the teaching point. And the first word, ama, means yes. Yes, great king. Yadi, if. And then here's our optative. So we've had this verb pati sandahati, which is the other kind, the more Buddhist kind of transfer. It's this relinking, or perhaps we can say rebirth, and it's expressed in the optative. And so if there was not this relinking or rebirth, and then one will be, bhavisati, liberated, and here's our ablative, plurals again, from evil actions, evil deeds. And then yasma chako. So yasma is since. Cha here has more of the sense of but than and ko is just really an intensifier. But since indeed, perhaps, great king, pati sandahati, this is our regular present indicative form of the verb, there is a relinking consciousness, or that one is reborn, but since one is reborn, tasma, therefore. So notice how the yasma is completed by the tasma, since, and then therefore, na parimuto, one is not parimuto, fully liberated. So this pari prefix has the sense of complete. One is not completely liberated, papakehi kamehi, from evil actions. And so he's saying, well, there is in fact a type of transference, even though it's not sankamati. It is this other one called pati sandahati. And so now, I hope I've made it mostly clear, but I'd like to do that again with a volunteer or several volunteers. They can read and translate themselves, so we can sort of make this more firm in your minds. And so I'll ask for a couple or even 3 blue hands who would like to read and translate. Okay, and I would like to ask that when you do your reading and translation, I don't need you, after you've read your Pali, to translate every word in order, but rather translate it in an order that makes more sense in Pali. Okay, perhaps we'll start with Jim.
Good evening, Stephen.
Good evening. Can you read for me the first 2 sentences in Pali?
Ante nagesena, ati kochi sato ya imam ha kaya anam kayam sankamatiti, nahi maharajati.
Okay, so what does that mean to us?
Well, Venerable Nagasena,
Mm-hmm.
is there any being?
That's right. So that's the Ati Kochi Satto, right?
Sato,
Right. Good. Which, or that's the relative pronoun yo. Good.
from one body,
Imam Hakaya. So what case is that?
that would be the ablative.
Right.
Anam kayam, samkamati.
Samkamati.
Samkamati, that's the transmigrates.
Yeah, right.
And then the anam kayam is to another body. That's in the accusative.
Right. Good. Very good. And now just give us the next sentence quickly, the very short one.
Basically, definitely not great king.
Very good. Good. Do you have any questions about that sentence?
No, I think I understand how it works.
I think you got it very well. Good. Okay, then maybe I'll take Jillian to read us the next sentence.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning, indeed. Yadi Bante Nagasena, Imam Ha Kaya and Anyang.
Anyang. It's kind of like the onion.
Gotcha. Anyang Kayang Samkamananto Nati Nanumuto Bavisati Papakehi Hameiti.
Right. So that's the big one. What does that all mean? So give it to me in sort of a translation order.
Okay. Right. Well, you always look for the subject first. I always look for the verb first. So.
What is the subject? What is the subject of this whole sentence?
Yes. Imam Ha Kaya.
No. We're looking for something in the nominative.
I thought Kaya was nominative plural.
No.
No. Oh, right.
It is ablative.
Thank you. I'm looking for another. Oh, it might be Muto, the one who's released.
That is an adjective modifying the main subject. You're getting closer.
Oh, yes, the one who... It must be Sam Kamanto, the one who transmigrates.
Right. The subject of the sentence is Sankamanto. So this is, and you can refer to this in the book in grammar section 6.2 again to refresh your memory, but it's a present participle. So this is Sankamati with this nt. That means we have a present participle and it's declined in the nominative singular. and it's functioning as the subject. So one who is transmigrating.
One who is transmigrating, from one body to another body.
Very good. So that's Immanhakaya to Anyankaya, and then plug in this yadi at least.
If
And then what is nati?
there isn't.
So putting that whole clause together, can you give it to me in English?
I think so. If Bhante Nagasana, there isn't one person or one thing that translates from one body to another body.
Good. That's right. Now let's go on.
Okay. Isn't it that that's Nanu?
Right. Or wouldn't it be, or is it not that? One of those things.
Yes. Isn't it that? It's the same as.
Sorry?
Oh, I said, isn't it that? To me, that's the same as wouldn't that be? Okay.
Yeah, it's just another option.
Okay, thank you. Future third singular. From evil actions is one of the modifiers. Now, barbicity is third singular future.
Good. Will be.
So isn't it that there will be, hang on.
Or one will be.
Oh, isn't it that one will be
Muto.
Released?
Right. Or liberated. Or yes, that's fine. And then?
Released, from evil actions.
Yes, in what case a number is papakehi kamehi, please?
It's ablative plural.
Right, from evil actions or evil deeds or evil bad commas. Very good.
Now, how should I parse muto?
Well, it's based on the verb.
Adjectival or nominal?
Say it again.
It's adjectival or nominal?
I guess it has more of it's kind of a nominative sense, but it's kind of related to the sankamanto. Because they're sort of the same person, but I would say it's another subject, certainly another nominative.
Okay, then it must be, yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Now let's have a third person. Maybe we'll try Christopher to do the next sentence, please. I could barely hear you. Can you raise your volume or get closer to your microphone?
Try. Ama Maharaja Yadi Adesandaheya Uto Abhisati Apakehi Nehi Achako Maharaja Abhisandahati Ma Aributo Apakehi Kamehi Chi.
Okay. So how would you translate that?
I don't know what that is.
You don't know what it is. It means yes.
Yes, great king. If isn't Pati Samadhi,
What sort of verb form is pati sandaheya?
it's one of these participles.
No.
Pati Samdaheya.
It has this double Y, and remember a few minutes ago I said this double Y is a marker for this special thing that we learned today. Do you remember?
Oh, I thought it was a participle.
No, it's the optative mood.
The optative mood, okay.
So how would you translate that? It has a sort of a conditional sense.
If there is not,
If there would not be,
yes, there would not be, but something. Is this
I can't really hear you, I'm afraid.
is this arising again in relation?
I don't know. No? What are you translating now?
Patisamdahe, yeah.
Yeah, so Pati Sandahati has something about rebirth. Maybe we can use rebirth or relinking.
If there's not relinking,
If there wasn't relinking, because this is a sort of sort of hypothetical idea, because that's why it's expressed in the optative, right?
so if there were not relinking,
Yes.
the liberated would not be would be
What is bhavisati?
basically future of becoming
Right, of bhavati
of it.
means there will be, there will be one liberated, muto, or one will be liberated.
Would be one liberated from evil actions.
Yes. What case is papakehi kamehi?
From evil actions, I guess it's ablative.
Ablative plural. That's
Plural.
right.
Yes, Chako Maharaja. Such that that one great king
So tell me, I didn't quite catch, how are you translating yasma chako?
such that
Well, yasma is since. We're taking cha to mean but since.
but since
And ko is like emphatic, like in certainly or indeed. And then Maharaja is our vocative, O great king.
but since then, great king, Pati Sandatahi,
We can say one is reborn, or there is relinking consciousness. One is relinking.
there is
right?
consciousness of
I can't hear you again. Can you get closer to the microphone?
Since great king, there is relinquishing of consciousness, then the fully liberated.
Well, you forgot the na. So na parimuto. One is, therefore is tasma. Na parimuto means one is not fully liberated. So that means, therefore, one is not fully liberated, papakehi kamehi, from evil actions. Do you see it now?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think I'll go on, and these sentences are somewhat repetitive, so we can take maybe hitet, if you're there.
Hello.
Hi, can you read for me, please, the first two sentences?
Sure. Bhante Nagasena Nacha Sankamati Patisandahati Jati Ama Maharaja Nacha Sankamati Patisandahati Jati.
Okay.
Bhante Nagasena, the vocative, Venerable Nagasena, Naja Sankamati Patisandahati. So I will take na with the first verb, Sankamati. If there is like not walking, not if it does not transmigrate, but
Well, there's no if. There's no if.
Yeah. So I would translate. It does not transmigrate, but it patisandahati, it is reborn.
Yeah, I would take the chas both as and in this case. And I would translate, one does not transmigrate and one is reborn, or rather, but, I guess maybe we can use the but one is reborn, or there is a relinking.
Thank you.
And then go on with the next sentence.
Thank you. And so he said, Ama, that's correct. Yes, Maharaja, great king. Naja Sankamati, one does not transmigrate.
Right, that's the soul idea, S-O-U-L, right?
Patisandahati ja. So I would take the second ja as but, as you said, but one is reborn, patisandahati.
Right. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, now we can try Fiakra.
Excellent. Hi.
If you can read and do the next, I guess it's 2 short sentences.
Okay. So, Katang Nagasena Nacha Sankamati Patisamdati Cha.
Dahati cha.
Dahati Cha. So, yeah. Opamang Karohi Ti.
Yes. Okay, so what is katang?
So, I believe it's like since, is it?
Or how?
How? Yes.
It's
how?
another type of interrogative pronoun. How? How?
Okay. How? Okay, yeah. So, and then addressing Bante Nagasena. And then so there is no it does not transmigrate.
Right.
But it reignites.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. These are verbs that are hard to translate, but that's fine. Okay, good. How is it? How is it that one does not transmigrate and or but one is reborn? And then can you explain opamang karohi? There's something here we haven't spoken about yet.
So
do you know what that means?
Is in the vocab as a simile, is it?
Yeah, an opama is a simile. That's right.
And then karohi is the same verb kri, the to make. So
yeah.
So and is that's so make a simile is what.
Do you know what we call this form of the verb? We haven't really talked about it.
Yeah, it's the imperative.
That's right. So this is the imperative. It is basically given to us very quickly in the grammar. You can look it up. It means imperative means like a sort of like a command, but it's not a order. It's sometimes or often the case that the imperative is used as a type of politeness.
Okay.
Like please. So please make a simile. So he doesn't quite get it. He's asking for some sort of further information. Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Maybe at this point I'll ask if there are any questions. Diane, are you there? Are there any questions I should know about from YouTube?
No questions at all.
Wow. Okay. Well, then I'll ask if maybe if you have your hand up to read, you can put it down, and then I'll see if there's any questions about what we've covered for the last hour. Okay, I think I have one question. Cheng?
Hi, Stephen. Thank
Hi.
you. Hi. My question is for the sentence Nacha Sankamati Pati Sandahati. How do we know that the na refers only to the Sankamati but not Pati Sandahati?
Well, I think the no would have to probably be repeated, but they're sort of placed in opposition to each other. There is not this, but there's that.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Shirosha?
Hi, Stephen.
Hi.
I just had a general question, not to do with the readings, but so if there is no subject present, should it be understood that we should look for the present participle as being as present participle as being it functions as the subject, or?
I'm not sure if you're thinking of a specific place. Often the subject is expressed built into the verb, because remember the verb has a personal pronoun built into that.
Oh, I see. No, I was just wondering like how to find exactly where the subject is, and if you cannot clearly identify one.
Hopefully
Maybe.
you will be.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. All right, I don't see any more questions. Wow. I hope everything is very clear then. I hope you can all hear me well. And then I will go on a bit with this last couple of sentences. And so here we have another form in this sentence of the ablative, which is the to ending. And so we've had already several kinds of ablative endings. You might have thought, wow, there's a lot of ablative kinds of versions. But in fact, there is another one called the to. Padipato is another ablative, and it's actually mentioned in our grammar in section 15. So you can find it there. So I'll read this sentence. Yata Maharaja Kochi Deva Puriso Padipato Padipang Padipeya Kinnu Ko So Maharaja Padipo Padipamha Sankamanto Ti. And the answer is Nahi Bante Ti. I see a question. Maybe I'll take that question first from Ken. Ken?
I was just volunteered to read next. That's all.
Well, maybe hold that thought, okay? Okay, so here, I'll explain this first. And so we have this somewhat famous simile. So yata is just as, and then we have this sandhi, which I spoke about when we look together at the dictionary entry. And so it's ko plus the chi in clitic, the clitic, and then it's joined together with this emphatic ava. And so the D of the original Sanskrit is reinstated, so to speak, to make it flow better. So we have this word kochi deva, which means someone. And so don't be confused by thinking this has something to do with devas. It's kochi eva. And then it's together with puriso, which is a person. So these two words together mean something like someone or another, some person. And then we go to our verb, which you might recognize with this double Y as being expressed in the optative, would, light. And then we have our ablative, from a lamp to another lamp, right? And then we have kinnu ko. So why is it that? Or how, or is it that perhaps? Is it that? That and the that is the so. That lamp. So padipo, great king. Sun kamanto. Once again, this is the present participle with the nt, unt, is transmigrating from another lamp? So in other words, when you have a lamp and you light it, you light another lamp with it, is it that that first one is transmigrating? No, nahi bhante, certainly not. And so then the answer finally is evam eva ko maharaja na cha sankamati pati sandahati cha ti. So in the same way, evam eva ko, O great king, one does not transmigrate, but what there is this relinking. This one is reborn. So that is Malinda Panha, first section, based on these two verbs. And I should ask, because I've been getting a notice that my connection is not so clear. Diane, how is my voice coming through for you?
Your voice is coming through fine. There's just kind of a gravelly sound.
A gravelly sound. I'm not sure what that means. You mean an extraneous sound?
Yes, not your voice at all, just another sound.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe somebody's mic is open. I don't know. Okay. Any questions on what I've just read? No. And there was somebody who had just raised their hand. Would they like to do this one more time quickly, if they're confident in being able to do it fairly quickly? Ken. Okay, good. Ken, can you read and translate this for us, please?
Just as great king.
Well, first read it for us in Pali.
Oh, sorry. Yata Maharaja Kusideva Puriso Padipato Padipam Padipeya Kinukos so Maharaja Padipo Padipamha Sankamanto Ti.
Okay, tell me about that.
Right. Just as great king, if some person lit a lamp from a lamp.
So what is padipeya? Tell me about that.
That's optative
Of
I think padipati.
Yeah, padipati. So wood light or wood kindle, and then what case again is padipato?
Light. It's ablative.
That's right. This is that new kind of ablative with the to suffix. Right. And then what case is padipang?
Accusative.
Right. So once again, we have this from and to expressed with the ablative and accusative. Good. Go on. The next clause, please.
Is it indeed, King, that the case that the lamp is transmigrating to the other lamp, or to the lamp?
Well, give it to me a little more literally. What's padipo padipamha? So what is that? So it's going with
the lamp.
That's so padipo, and then sun kamanto. What do we call that grammatically?
Is transmigrating.
Right. And then padipamha. What case?
Ablative.
Right. So can you also explain kin nu? What is that? How is that made?
I remember looking at it this afternoon. I can't remember.
It's actually the pronoun king plus nu.
Oh yeah.
So king plus nu joins together, and so the nasal changes, and then we have kin nu.
Right. So
and it has that sense of, is it that? Or why?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I had translated as is it indeed.
yeah. Is that so Padipo, that lamp, and that is being described as Sankamanto, transmigrating Padipamha from another lamp. Nahi Bante. Very good, thank you. Okay. I think maybe if we have no further questions, we might say, oh, we do have some questions. I hope we have some questions, because I'm a little suspicious to think not that everyone has this crystal clear. So I'll take Pat.
Hi.
Hi.
I just had a quick question about the to form of the ablative. The thing that comes to mind is Bhagavato Arhato. That's in that case it's a dative, right?
Yes.
So, okay, good. So the dative or the ablative can have that to.
Yes, but we're talking about two completely different classes of nouns or adjectives. So that's why, yes, it's the same letters, but they function very differently.
Oh,
Right.
because this is the ANT ones. I'm sorry. Okay.
This is basically the masculine short A.
Okay.
Not the Vunt Munt group. Okay, but that's a good question. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Christopher?
Oh yes.
And if you could speak very loudly, because I could barely hear you.
With a lamp, is it a lamp or is it the flame in the lamp that's transmigrating or being transferred?
I imagine it's the flame, but that's a little too philosophical for me to know. It's not really a grammar question. I don't know, but the sense of it is that there's something that's moving from one lamp to another. What exactly is it? Okay? Okay. All right. So I think we'll finish now with our announcements. And I'm hoping in our next class we can do the readings numbers 2 and 3. And so we spent a lot of time on grammar today, and I hope we can do more reading on Wednesday or Thursday, the next class, whatever the time that may be for you. And so I'd like to ask my friend and colleague Regina to give us a few announcements, please.
Sure. Thank you, Stephen. And once again, you guys dare to impress. I'm so amazed how much you've learned, and it's great that so many of you are continuing on with this class. So I wanted to remind you all that Bhikkhu Bodhi teaches Sutta study every Saturday. Meditation begins at 9:30 a.m. and his class begins at 10 and runs to about 11:15, 11:20. Also, Stephen, along with myself, teaches Sutta study every Sunday night and every Thursday night from 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 7:45 Eastern Standard Time. And you can get more information on that at suttaandthecity.com. Further, if you would like to offer dana to the Changyen Monastery, you may do so at their website. You can check them out at baus.org and just click on the donate button. So that's it for tonight, and thank you all so much. I look forward to seeing you again Wednesday.
Okay, thank you. So thank you all very much, and I look forward to seeing you all again.
Thank you.
The next session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, bye now.
Thank you.
Hey,